This series of shorter videos should sum up what this channel is all about. It should help orientate not only newcomers, to whom I thank for subscribing, but it should make it easier to understand where we exist as a human civilization. The Bible texts were not written by accident, but it is a message for our generation to have a guide to seek the truth. Just as this world did not come into being by chance, nothing happens in our life by chance either. Everything has its own order, which, however, changes over the millennia, and thus the shape of our earth changes as well. The earth had and has many names, may be different for each civilization. However, its essence remains, even though everything has a beginning and an end. And the meaning of our life? It is learning, searching and finally knowing the truth that can be shocking to most people. Perhaps shocking also in the sense of how mainstream science actually distorts facts, history, and also conceals the very essence of human existence. But one fact is quite obvious. Everything is right in front of our eyes. I hope you enjoy this series. Thank you. Almost everyone knows this shape of the continents. Did they teach you that in school too? Forget about it. Although the shapes of the current form of the continents quite surprisingly fit together like a puzzle. The geologists who made this map did not take one fact into account: the still large area of is flooded by the sea. And don't forget that God is creative and would never do something like this. Let's take a look at it. That's approximately the entire landmass of the American continent, which I've highlighted in purple. During the cataclysm, the continents were literally torn apart and melted. The Bible mentions a great flood. But there are also references to melting rocks in Psalm chapter 97 verse 5b-21, "The mountains melt like wax before the Lord of the whole earth." Another indication of great heat on the earth is found in John's Revelation, verse 16. "They will no longer hunger or thirst, nor will the sun or other heat harm them." What heat? Plato also mentions the American continent, although he does not directly name it, as we will explain later. The west coast of the American continent lies along the so-called Ring of Fire. This area includes the Kuril Islands, Alaska in the north, the eastern tip of Siberia, Japan, Australia, Indonesia and other islands in the west. This area is seismically very active and interesting. These are the actual outlines of the former landmass. In some areas, the mainland has been preserved as islands. The green arrow on the right indicates the strip of land that broke away from today's Kuril Islands and the west coast, the American continent. To the left is a strange folding of the sea floor that probably occurred when the continents moved and the Earth's rock melted or liquefied. These outlines still retain hints of a circular shape. Most of the land is located in the northern hemisphere and on the equator. Here in Australia it is easy to see how the world has literally torn itself apart. Australia shows all the signs of a scorched earth and was originally part of a larger continent further north. I believe that it may have been in close proximity to Africa, or was a part of it. This would be a possible explanation for the hieroglyphs found in Australia. You can see the outlines of the detached and still flooded land in the photo. If we talk about hieroglyphs, it should be remembered that the Great Pyramid and the Sphinx were not built by any pharaoh 4,000 years before Christ. These buildings are mentioned in the texts on the Emerald Tablets, the author of which is Thoth. The age of the plates is estimated at about 36,000 years and, among other things, the text states that Atlantis was already destroyed at that time. That is, more than 36,000 years ago. On Google Earth, you may notice strange grooves on the seafloor. I believe that these are traces of the friction of the rock during the cataclysm, when the rock melted or liquefied and thus devastated the original arrangement of the continents, including their shape. And finally we find ourselves at Antarctica. As you can see, this continent is also connected to the American continent. He seems to have been a part of it. During the cataclysm, it was detached and turned. Let's look at the North Pole. If you turn on the timeline in Google Earth, you'll see a blurry circle on the screen. If you turn off the timeline, you can see in detail what is in the place. A groove runs from the North Pole through both hemispheres to the South Pole. If you try the same thing at the South Pole, you will see nothing, just a radial circle. At a time when you can find a pin on the street on Google Earth. So how is Antarctica really doing? Could this be a strip of land digitally curved into a circle? Is our Earth round? Is it flat? Is it an oval? Humanity has been arguing about this topic for hundreds of years. But how is it really? Perhaps his form is always before our eyes throughout our existence. Look at the testimony of Rear Admiral Richard E. Byrd, who participated in Operation High Jump from 1946 to 1947. His name and credit seem to have been erased from world consciousness, and the U.S. took some action after this testimony.
North Pole and the South Pole. Is there any unexplored land left on this Earth that might appeal to adventurous young Americans?
Yes, there is. And not up around the North Pole, because it's getting crowded up there now, because they find out it's really usable, not only to live in, but militarily. But strangely enough, there's left in the world today an area as big as the United States that's never been seen by a human being. And that's beyond the pole on the other side of the South Pole from Middle America. And I think it's quite astonishing that there should be an area as big as that unexplored.
This is a tremendous
So
challenge.
there's a lot of adventure left down at the bottom of the world.
Admiral, do you hope to see that?
Doesn't it look more like this old map where the strip of land to the south is named Ptolemy's unknown land? Claudius Ptolemy has nothing to do with Cleopatra, but he was a very important physicist, mathematician and astronomer, whose work has been discarded by modern science and brought a new perspective to our world. What about Orlando Ferguson's biblical map that shows the sun and moon aren't really that huge, as modern science teaches us, but do they orbit the Earth? Galileo Galilei, who said the famous sentence, "and yet it spins," could have been a really big heretic who offended even the Pope himself. However, every era has its political rivals, and unfortunately they often serve to overturn the truth to strengthen their own ambitions. So where is Byrd's continent the size of the US? According to the biblical Genesis, at the beginning world, God separated the waters from the waters and created the earth. Of course, this would mean that the universe is not a vacuum, but is full of water. Our world is made up of water. Under surface there is 3 times more water than on the surface, in the form of a special stone called ringwoodite. So the separation of water from water created our atmosphere. And do you believe in magic and spells? You should. Because the facts that we will gradually discuss in the following parts will be absolutely incredible.